G'day everyone, my name's Asher Pike, and today we're going to talk about where the papacy is taught in the Bible, because, I want to talk about it because it's the reason I became Catholic. And so the way the Bible teaches the papacy is in Isaiah chapter 22, verses 15 to 25. And in that chapter, we see that the kings of Israel had or employed what was called a steward. He was the second in command to the king, and he helped the king or served him in governing the realm and passing laws on behalf of the king. And basically this role was also called the role of a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. This is in Isaiah chapter 22, verse 21. Read verses 15 to 25. That's the job description of this second in command to the king of Israel. Okay, and also King Solomon had a second in command as well in 1 Kings, chapter 1 or chapter 2. Check it out. There's so many second in commands to the kings. But also remember, that Joseph was second in command to Pharaoh as well. That's another example. This wasn't just a position in Israel, but also in Egypt, in the Persian Empire. Daniel also became pretty high up there in the Persian Empire. And so this role of being the second in command is a biblical role, and especially is true to the structure of the kingdom of David. Okay? And so check out Isaiah chapter 22, verses 15 to 25, because that really it tells us about the job description somewhat of the second to the king of Israel. And he is called a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And what does Pope mean in English? A father. So the papacy is actually biblical. And but where does Jesus Christ himself confirm that he follows this Old Testament tradition when establishing his own government or following or ecclesia? Where does it say that he follows King Hezekiah in Isaiah chapter 22 in making someone his second in command? Well, we see that he does this with St. Peter in Matthew chapter 16, verses 18 to 19 especially. Jesus Christ says in the original Aramaic tongue, "You are Kepha, and on this Kepha I will build my church." The word Kepha means a normal rock. And we know that he said Kepha originally in the original Aramaic, because in John chapter 1, Jesus Christ says, he meets Peter and says, "You are Simon, behold, you will be named Cephas," which is the Greek alliteration, or the English spelling of the Aramaic Kepha. So Jesus really did call Peter rock. He called him Kepha in the original Aramaic, according to John, but also according to to Paul himself. In Galatians and 1 Corinthians, he calls Peter Cephas loads of times. So even Paul himself calls Peter the rock, because Kepha or Cephas literally translates to a normal rock, not a little pebble. Some people say that Jesus really called Peter a little pebble, because in the original Greek, it's true that before the time of Christ, the word Petros and Petra meant different things. So what people do is they say, well, in the original Greek, it says that Jesus said, "You are Petros, and on this Petra, I will build my church." And so in the original Greek, they say, well, Jesus didn't call Peter the Petra upon which the church is built. He called Peter Petros, which means pebble. Now, it's true that in the times before Jesus Christ, the words Petros and Petra meant different things. But in the time of Jesus Christ, they meant the same thing. And one of the evidences for that, and many scholars are coming to agree with this, it's a growing consensus. And one of the evidences for this is because John, in his gospel, says, as I just told you, that Jesus said to Peter, "You will be called Cephas, Kepha." And John leaves a little note there saying that translates to Petros. And so John is saying that in his day, in his time, the word Petros in Greek translated to Cephas or Kepha, according to John himself. And so Jesus really did say, "You are Kepha, and on this Kepha I will build my church." So Peter is the rock, Peter is the Kepha, and that means Peter is the stability of the church itself. That's a huge position of honor. That easily makes Peter the second in command to Jesus Christ. No question at all. He's the second to Jesus in rank. The stability of the church itself. The stability of God's people. Now, obviously, this is Jesus Christ's role as well. Jesus is the rock. But he clearly, in Matthew 16, verses 18 and 19, shares this role with Peter of being the stability of the church itself. Now, the other disciples are described as foundation stones that are laid upon the rock of the church, but the other disciples are not described as the rock itself. Jesus only makes Peter the rock upon which the church is built, the rock upon which the foundations are laid, according to St. Paul. And so Peter really is given this position of high honor in the kingdom of David, of being the second to the king. And according to the context of Isaiah chapter 22, that is the same thing as being the chief steward. If you are the second to an Israelite king, de facto, by default, you take the position of being the chief steward. And we see in Isaiah chapter 22 that position included succession of office. Shebna, the wicked steward in Isaiah chapter 22, is succeeded by Eliakim, who becomes the new chief steward and who is called a father, which, what does Pope mean in English? A father. So the papacy really is a biblical idea. The idea that the king of Israel has a chief steward, a second in command, who passes laws on his behalf. Catholics say they call that dogmas in a way, because the Pope passes decrees of the Lord Jesus Christ on the king's behalf about faith and morals, just like the second in command to the kings of Israel passed laws on behalf of the king to the people. And Jesus Christ, as the new king of Israel, follows this Davidic tradition, and he makes Peter the second to him by making Peter the rock upon which the church is built. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this really gives you something to think about, and God bless you so much.